event. I am a technical advisor at Education Development Center, or EDC, and I am the leader of the USAID Higher Education Learning Network, which we call affectionately the HELN. I am delighted to welcome you to this event where we are going to be exploring the intersection of higher education employability and climate resilience. And we're going to be featuring some really interesting research from EDC, as well as local partners in the Philippines from USAID's Opportunity 2.0 project. And I know there are some folks from Opportunity 2.0 here, so welcome, special welcome to them. Before we get started, I do have a few quick reminders. So first, we are recording this event, both this main session as well as the breakout rooms we will join in a moment, so please note that. Additionally, auto closed captioning is available in English. Please click the CC icon to access this feature. You can also click on the globe icon to access interpretation in French or Spanish. Please use the chat feature to add a comment whenever you like. We love to hear from you. And if you haven't already done so, please introduce yourself into the chat. Also, for questions, we ask that you use the Q&A feature from Zoom, which is located at the bottom or top of your screen. You can submit questions and you can upvote questions if you agree with someone else's question at any time. Finally, to preserve bandwidth, we do ask that during our plenary session, you mute your microphone and turn off your camera when you are not speaking. Okay, so with those sort of housekeeping items out of the way, I'd like to share our 3 objectives for this web event. First, that you walk away with an understanding of the role of climate responsive employability programs in addressing both climate change and employability gaps. Second, we want you to be able to cite some specific examples of successful green employability programs in low and middle income countries, which is where most of us work. And finally, we want you to be able to identify some key skills for these types of programs, as well as some opportunities to collaborate with stakeholders like local governments, communities, and the private sector in your context. We're going to spend some time actively working on this sort of second part of this in our web event to help generate some ideas on how green higher education employability programs can exist and work in your context after today's event as well. So why green higher education employability? Why are we having this event? Well, to begin, we know that higher education institutions and systems play a critical role in employability. Through collaboration between industry and government, higher education institutions prepare graduates with the skills they need to be continuously employable in an ever-evolving labor market. We also know that climate change is creating many, many changes to the labor market. It's spawning new industries to combat climate change, and it's making more communities more resilient to climate shocks. And so given this, how can we support higher education institutions to not only prepare graduates for the labor market, but how can we support higher education employability programs to meet the needs of these new climate responsive industries? We are going to explore this question and more through this webinar, sharing new research on how economies are making this green transition. And we're going to share how partnerships between USAID, higher education institutions, industry, and government are paving the way to support green higher education employability programs. So before we hear more about these examples, let's dive into USAID's policies and strategies around both climate and higher education. And to help us understand this intersection, I'm going to hand this over to Ghazala Saeed, Senior Higher Education Advisor at the USAID Center for Education. Ghazala, please come on camera. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll hand it over to you.
Well, thank you, Jennifer, and thank you everyone for being here. I'll just, set a little bit of a background of why climate action, green jobs is important to USAID. So we recognize that climate change is a global crisis, which disproportionately impacts marginalized populations, and it is a direct threat to development programs and have the potential to impede our critical work to strengthen education systems. And so in order to achieve climate resilient systems and climate resilience learners, we have released two important key policy strategy pieces. So one is our USAID's climate strategy, which lays out different ways on how we can ensure climate action throughout our work in different areas in USAID. And the second one is the guidance to implement, technical guidance to implement that climate strategy. And these create ambitious targets to respond to climate change while identifying opportunities to create climate action and awareness in education programs, and then create climate resilient education systems and prepare climate resilient learners. And by incorporating a climate sensitive approach in contextual analysis, design, and implementation of USAID programs, we can mitigate disruptions to learners brought on by climate-related shocks and stressors, and support pro-environmental decision-making and behavior change in learners. Can we move to next slide? So all of our work in higher education is guided by USAID's Higher Education Learning Agenda, which has 10 critical questions to support higher education programming and higher education's central role in development. And this event specifically aligns with question 4 from our learning agenda, which focuses on employability and asks, how can skills or competencies for employability be best identified, analyzed, and incorporated into curricula, teaching, and learning. And the climate resilience education guidance, which I talked about earlier, which, as I mentioned, that lays out a guideline for implementing our climate strategy particularly in education programming, outlines ways which bring together higher education employability programs to be responsive to climate change. And through this, we specifically ask how to make climate change and awareness a resilient central part of higher education core missions of research and teaching, how to utilize higher education's networking and community engagement role to facilitate the coordination of key stakeholders who can share and respond to climate relevant challenges, and how to ensure that our investments in climate responsive higher education prioritize equity as the effects of climate change disproportionately impact the most marginalized. And so by making our work more climate responsive, we know that we can prepare higher education graduates to overcome and thrive in an ever-changing world and become learners in climate resilience for themselves and their communities. And with that, I will hand it back to Jennifer, who will share more about USAID's higher education work on employability. So back to you, Jennifer. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Gazella. So appreciate you bringing the higher education learning agenda and the climate policy together for us. So thank you. So before we go any further, I think it's time for us to do just a little bit of definition work. So let's discuss what we mean when we say higher education employability. As you may know, the HELN has been conducting research on good practices in employability using a locally led research process. We actually just had some consultations with that earlier this week. And so through these consultations, the HELN has been working with our employability working group, as well as regional convenings with our members. And we've identified 5 broad categories of higher education activities that support graduates' transition from the workforce and support their continuous employability after graduation. These practices are on the screen, and they include curriculum alignment with industry needs, opportunities for entrepreneurship education, work integrated learning, such as internships and other practical experiences, career services that help students find and get employment, and marketing and promotion, or the ways in which institutions sort of publicly position and promote themselves as preparing employable graduates. All of these employability activities rest on the need for data. So higher education institutions know the needs of the market, and employers understand how institutions are partners in meeting workforce needs. So I'd like for you to keep these practices in mind throughout the webinar, and we're going to revisit them throughout our breakout rooms. So for our next point, of course, we're not just interested in general employability practices, right? Today, we're focused on how to make these, as we call, green. And for that, we also need to define what we mean by green for everyone here. And so on the screen, you'll see three key terms: green economy, green and blue jobs, climate resilient education systems. Okay. The first is the green economy, which we define as an economy that results in improved human well-being while reducing environmental risk. So improving humans, reducing environmental risk. The second is green and blue jobs. And these are jobs that do that. They reduce environmental risk, they safeguard the environment, and they promote climate resilience. Finally, the third is climate resilient educational systems. And so here we are describing educational systems that are able to deliver quality education despite climate-related shocks and changing environmental conditions like floods and heat waves. And so as we begin to think more about how to make curriculum, career services, work integrated learning, and other higher education employability practices, how do we make those more green? We want to keep in mind sort of this overall goal about reducing risks and safeguarding the environment. Okay, I've been talking for a few minutes, and I would really love to understand what you all are thinking. So let's do a brief poll activity. I'd love to know what blue and green jobs exist in your community. So you'll see either a pop-up window with a prompt to respond to on the screen, or you can click on the bar chart icon at the bottom or top of your screen to access the poll. And so please, if you don't know what a blue or green job that might exist in your context is, that's totally fine. Let us know that too. But the question is, do you know what green and blue jobs exist in your community? I'll give you a quiet few seconds to answer. Okay, let's see if we can get the poll results up. I'm seeing some people put in some responses already. Give everybody a 1 or 2 more minutes to do that. We have responses rolling in. Okay, great. One more second. All right, final few seconds. Okay, there we go. Can we display the results on the screen? Okay, it looks like a lot of you do know what blue or green jobs exist. A few of you don't. That's okay. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. Seeing some examples in here as well. All right. All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks so much. We're going to share more about those results, and we're going to hear some more examples in just a second. So I'm very excited to share that with you. But for now, I really am delighted to hand this over to Dr. Milena Noby-Marks, an international technical advisor at EDC and a professor of sustainable development at the University of Rochester, to talk a little bit about her work on employability and the green economy. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Milena.
Hey, thanks, Jennifer. I'm really excited to be here today to represent Education Development Center. I'll be discussing some of the learnings from our research after decades of programming to support higher education institutions. And we will look at how these institutions can support students to access greener employment using 5 key levers. So, stepping back, the context for higher ed and employability, we cannot ignore the threat of climate change. Governments have set national goals to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, and economies are facing challenges in transitioning to net zero. Without a workforce with the right skills for these low carbon economies, we cannot meet our net zero targets. It's that simple. And a shortage of workers will make the cost of this transition higher and slow it down. So at Education Development Center in 2022, we launched the Our World, Our Work initiative. Our goal is to support 1 million young people to access decent green and blue jobs, and also to amplify their voices on climate action. So as part of this, we conducted a series of labor market assessments, and we found that some of the fastest growing green and blue sectors in low and middle income countries are renewable energy, green construction, sustainable tourism, and waste management. So we also consistently found a disconnect between climate targets and green growth strategies. So we should be on the next slide. There we go. And that was at the national level, these strategies, and local economies where policies and incentives to meet those goals are often lacking. And many training institutions are not yet offering courses for jobs in blue and green sectors. So to bridge this disconnect, we need a systems approach that ensures that all actors are working together: higher education institutions, private employers, young people, and local governments. And our experience has shown that 5 levers can support a just transition to green economies and more employment for young people. So 5 levers I would discuss each in turn, but just to put them out there, the first is information and data on labor markets. Second, coordination between local and national actors. Third, education and skills. Fourth, finance and policy levers. And fifth, inclusion for all groups. So taken together, these 5 levers form a systems approach for transforming skills in education and filling the workforce needs of a low carbon economy. So taking each in turn, first, the information and data lever. Many actors, both nationally and locally, lack data on the latest trends in the fastest growing low carbon and transitioning sectors. They want to know, where will the growth be in the next 5 years, and what are the skills that will be needed? And how much awareness is out there among local actors on climate and on sustainability? So the second lever is coordination. We often see very little coordination between actors in the workforce development system. The local government, businesses, higher education and training institutions, and students and graduates themselves are often not working together to collect and share information on trends in the labor market, to design new training programs and policies, and to support career pathways and work-based learning, as well as business development for the companies. Third, the education and skills lever. It's important, of course, that young people have the skills needed to support transitions to net zero economies, and we know that blue and green jobs require more innovation. So the green skills that we're talking about are really cross-cutting skills like digital skills, critical thinking, and problem-solving skills, as well as an understanding of sustainability needs and practices. And then at a higher level, we also consider technical and industry-specific skills, such as solar engineering or becoming an expert in plastics recycling. Fourth is our finance and policy lever. So governments are setting their climate targets, such as the nationally determined contributions under the Paris Climate Accord, but often there's not financing or incentives for businesses to help achieve these goals. Higher education institutions can design and advocate for policy solutions such as economic and tax incentives, and they can also be incubators for research and development to test and launch new technologies that might be the beneficiaries of these kinds of incentives. And fifth, the inclusion lever. Including women, youth, and marginalized groups, including Indigenous people and existing workers that are transitioning, is very crucial. These groups are often most vulnerable to climate change and unemployment, but they also have ideas and deep knowledge and a source of innovation. So higher education institutions can play a great role in facilitating and modeling inclusion. So across all of our work and our studies and research, we have found significant gaps, especially in information and coordination levers. So to address these, EDC has conducted a number of labor market assessments in countries where we work. I'll be focusing on Philippines today because this is our case study for the seminar. So in the Philippines, our work involved 3 activities on the labor market assessment. First, we collaborated with Filipino higher education institutions on a labor market assessment to gather information on green job opportunities and skills needs across 14 different cities. Second, we partnered with Accenture to conduct a national level green labor market assessment of key sectors and trends. And third, we worked with local partners to establish a Youth Development Alliance. The Youth Development Alliance convenes local government, universities, training institutions, youth representatives, and private sector businesses to collect and share information together on what they are doing, how they're growing, and what their needs are, and then adapt policies and training curricula to meet this market demand. So the Youth Development Alliance is really a great example of how to leverage information and coordination to support a just transition and green and blue employment. It's important to remember this is an iterative process. It's not just a one-time labor assessment. It really means developing local capacity and processes where meeting together, collecting and sharing information, and then updating training and employment programs is institutionalized and done on a regular basis. If done right, all of these 5 levels working together are a powerful system to support just transitions to low carbon economies and employment for students and graduates. So thank you, and I will now pass the mic to Jennifer, who will introduce our case example on Quezon City University.
Thank you so much, Melina. Really fantastic work. I just so appreciate you sharing this research from the Our World, Our Work initiative at EDC. And I just want to remind us, we have these 5 levers, right? We have information and data, coordination of local and national actors, education and skills, finance and policy, and inclusion. And these are just really great ways to sort of understand this. And I'm going to ask everybody to keep those in your mind as we're going to talk about a specific case example from the Philippines and a USAID project called Opportunity 2.0. So let me begin by introducing this because I think it's really important to note that USAID's Opportunity 2.0 project is not only a higher education project, and actually greening higher education employability is just one small portion of it. Actually, Opportunity 2.0 focuses on second chance education and employment opportunities to vulnerable current and former out of school youth, right? And it works at an ecosystem level, coordinating with and working with a variety of stakeholders to help make the education and employment systems work together for vulnerable youth. In this context, Opportunity 2.0 works directly with higher education institutions in a variety of ways to support employability. So in addition to having institutions conduct research, or they've created some really great technology solutions for out-of-school youth, these institutions partner with Opportunity 2.0 to orient vulnerable youth to education opportunities, and they integrate work readiness programs into their degree programs and educational offerings. And higher education institutional partners have actually developed their own community of practice to support higher education's role in educational opportunities and workforce development initiatives. So today's case study highlights one partnership that I think is particularly relevant to greening higher education employability programs. Opportunity 2.0 partnered with Quezon City's municipal government to create, as Melina was saying, a youth development alliance within Quezon City that brings together business, youth, government, and higher education to coordinate training and employability efforts. And USAID has also provided direct funding to Quezon City University to train local government leaders on how to support youth employability and strengthen the work of this Youth Development Alliance. And so through these 5 levers, this partnership has really demonstrated how to be climate resilient in employability programs. Under the direction of Quezon City's mayor, the Honorable Joy Beaumont, Quezon City has created a variety of climate responsive workforce development programs with Quezon City University. And that helps give higher education graduates the skills and education they need to support Quezon City's green initiatives, such as recyclable recovery, waste segregation, compost development, and many others. And so to introduce this policy environment for Quezon City, I am so pleased to share this video message from Mayor Joy Beaumont, and then later we'll welcome the president of Quezon City University to share more about this important work. But for now, let's watch this short video. Wonderful.
Mabuhay! A pleasant day to all of the attendees of the Greening Higher Education Employability webinar hosted by the USAID Higher Education Learning Network. It is such an honor to join you in this very important event today. Around the world, we are experiencing an unending series of calamities. From floods and heat waves to earthquakes and wildfires, disasters have claimed lives, devastated properties, and affected the most disadvantaged up to the most vulnerable members of society. These events are mere evidence of the adverse effects of climate change. Right here in Quezon City, the impacts of climate change have already made their presence felt. This is why the City Council took a major step by passing a resolution declaring a climate emergency as early as 2019 that allowed us to allocate as much as 13% of the city's annual budget on various climate action initiatives. As the city continues to navigate the different challenges posed by climate change and strives to carry out solutions towards sustainable development today, we do recognize that it is also imperative for us to develop a workforce equipped with the knowledge and skills that are necessary for a green economy. We believe that one key component of this very important goal is the promotion of green jobs and sustainability efforts among the youth in higher education institutions, or HEIs. To bridge the gap in sustainability education, we have proactively strengthened the curriculum at our own Quezon City University by incorporating subject courses on environmental sustainability, sustainable development, and eco-business. Complementing this initiative, we inaugurated the QCU Center for Urban Agriculture and Innovation during its 30th anniversary. Here, students gain hands-on experience with smart farming techniques like aquaponics, hydroponics, raised bed farming, and greenhouse cultivation. In 2023, we also introduced the QC Green Awards, the country's first award-giving body initiated by a local government which recognizes climate action and disaster risk reduction and management undertaken by various stakeholders, including youth councils from the 142 villages in Quezon City, youth-based organizations, businesses, and many more. One of the awardees last year was Danica Magat, a Gen Z who owns Through Habit Cafe, a small business offering plant-based food options, refilling stations, and sustainable items such as bags, clothing, and accessories made from recyclable materials. Lastly, it is almost 2 years since we first launched the Startup QC program, and last April, we kicked off the competition for students to help young entrepreneurs, including students, kickstart their innovative business ideas. It is good to know that 1/3 of our finalists, or 13 out of the 39 groups who made the cut, have green and sustainable business plans. This is a good indication that our students are ready to contribute to our efforts to combat climate change and its effects. Climate change presents us with a formidable task, but within this challenge lies an unprecedented chance to come together and play our fair duty. With their ability to think outside the box, initiate a collective movement, and propose innovative solutions, I do believe that the youth hold the key to a sustainable future. So I would like to urge our youth to embrace their potential, unleash their creativity, and come with us in building a greener and more resilient world. If not now, then when?
Oh, it's just so inspiring, isn't it? I'm so delighted that we were able to share that and all of the amazing initiatives that the mayor of Quezon City has put forth, and a little bit about the partnership they've had with Quezon City University. And so now I'm actually very pleased to invite Dr. Teresa Atienza, president of Quezon City University, to come on camera and share a little bit more about these amazing initiatives and how they have used the 5 levers to shape their employability programs to make them more green. So I do want to remind you all before I turn it over, please use the Q&A feature to submit questions that you have. We'll have a couple minutes to do that as well today. So over to you, Dr. Atienza.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for that introduction. I'm very pleased to be speaking with all of you about the work of Quezon City University. Quezon City University has partnered with USAID and EDC through the Opportunity 2.0 project in order to create new opportunities and strengthen existing programs for our students to prepare them for the kind of jobs that are needed for future affected by climate change. Our local chief executive, Mayor Joy Belmonte, serves as the chairperson of the QCU Board of Regents. Thus, in the mission to serve our city and its communities, Quezon City University plays a vital role in coordinating with partners and responding to climate initiatives set out by the mayor. It can be challenging to understand what green jobs are available for our students and how we can best prepare them. However, because of the policy environment and priorities of our mayor, the entire academic community is conscious of environment-friendly practices and the need for sustainable initiatives, which helps us prioritize green jobs in our academic and career services. Through our participation in the Quezon City Youth Development Alliance, we are able to collaborate with stakeholders and ask questions from the public and private sector on the jobs employers need to fill, which helps us make more informed choices in our programs. As a university, we also believe that we must give students the skills to turn any job into a green job, and that priority is part of all of our work. When designing our education programs, we work collaboratively with our partners. We utilize our relationships with Quezon City's Public Employment and Skills Office to achieve a high rate of employment for our graduates and a very high percentage of employability. We develop new curricula, and as an example, our Urban Agriculture National Service Training Program gives students the opportunity to begin working as trainers and assistants in Quezon City's community farms. We have worked to make this program more green by aligning it with sustainable development goals and integrating new skills related to sustainability and less harmful farming practices into the program. As for finance, we do not only enjoy the full support of our local chief executive, but that of our legislative officials as well. Our initiatives and programs that require legislation have always been enforced and funded. QCU is able to access grants from partner government agencies, such as the 14 million pesos grant to set up greenhouses from the Department of Agriculture. The Department of Science and Technology has entrusted almost 1 million pesos for the conduct of a research on black soldier flies. It is noteworthy to say that the university is trusted not only by both the city's executive and legislative branch, but by national agencies as well. When we think about how to include marginalized populations into our green employability programs, we work with our students and the broader community through our community extension programs. For example, we have enrolled women deprived of liberty in our entrepreneurship program, and they have participated in business courses and trainings conducted by the Center for Urban Agriculture and Innovation. This program ensures that no woman is left behind. Through our community extension programs, we work with youth who may never enroll in higher education, but who can achieve better access to employment and livelihood opportunities through our training programs. The Office of the Mayor also provides startup financial capital through our livelihood programs to help vulnerable youth start their business. As I mentioned earlier, Quezon City University is part of the Youth Development Alliance, which facilitates coordination and collaboration among our key stakeholders. The Youth Development Alliance also enables us to sustain our commitment to green employability programs by allowing us to collaboratively plan, implement, and monitor programs for youth employability. This ordinance that you see on screen institutionalizes the presence of QCU in the whole of system approach to equip enrolled and unenrolled youth to enter into the blue and green economy. Through its membership in the YDA, Quezon City University has gained new partners, participated in resource sharing or mobilization, gained exposure to new models of green and blue employability programs. I am certainly proud of the ways Quezon City University has adapted and transformed the work that we do to help our graduates and the broader community be prepared for blue and green economy. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share some of our work and how we have used the 5 levers of change to better support of graduates. With that, I will turn this back over to Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Atienza. I really so appreciate all of the amazing work that Quezon City University has done. I'm delighted that we're able to share it. We have a few minutes for Q&A, so if you could stay on video, and I'd actually love to invite Dr. Novi Marks to come back on as well. For those of you who are in the audience and have a quick question, please feel free to use the Q&A chat to upload your questions. If we don't get time to do them today, we'll make sure that we send out some answers afterwards. But I did see one question in the chat that I thought might be really helpful for some of our audience. And that was what advice you would have for institutions or others who may not be operating in sort of the similar policy environment. They may not have these sort of local ordinances that are really directing them towards green work, but how would you suggest they get started? And what advice would you have for them? And Milena, maybe I'll start with you, based on the research, which of the levers is more important? How would they get started in using those?
Thank you. I mean, that's a great question. I think the information and data lever is really important to start with, and that can be using existing studies or really supporting government agencies or youth themselves to go out into the community to interview employers, to talk to people around them. What are the kinds of skills that are needed, what are kinds of jobs available, and what sectors seem to be growing quickly. So having that information can help them know what the opportunities are, and then hopefully be able to access their institutions and get training in those areas. So even if there's not readily developed, for example, solar industries, youth can also start their own businesses. And we do believe that it's only a matter of time until these industries will be quite established all over the world.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Information and data, really important as part of the employability framework as well. So clearly very critical. Dr. Atienza, based on your experience, how would you, what advice would you give for an institution that wants to get started in some of this work?
Well, I agree with Milena that information and data is very important, no? And how do we get this? Through partnership with our other stakeholders outside of the university is very important. That gives us information on what are the available jobs there, what are the skills needed, so that we input this into our curriculum.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Now, I know there are more questions in the chat, but we do want to give everyone an opportunity to sort of play with these ideas. So I think at this point, I'd just love to say thank you so much, Dr. Atienza, Dr. Novi Marks, for joining us and for being with us. I know you're going to stick around for a little bit longer, but I'd love to get us into breakout rooms. So I'll say thank you again so much, and we'll send more questions to you for our audience for later. Okay? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we have... we're going to take some time to do some active thinking about how you, in your context, can contribute to each of these 5 levers and support higher education institutions' employability. And so through that, we've done some initial mapping. So we've been talking about 5 levers and 5 employability practices. So let me show you how those would work together. In the next slide, when it comes up, in the gray column, you'll see 5 levers that we've heard about from both EDC and Opportunity 2.0 program. And then on the blue header row, you'll see 5 higher education employability practices that we discussed in the beginning of the event. And so you can see where they intersect, where each of the levers for greening higher education employability intersects with each practice. And we've identified a couple of some solutions, some practices, some examples for you. What we're going to do is, let me actually show you a specific example. So if we wanted to green career services at a higher education institution by leveraging education and skills lever, I might suggest that we would create a career development seminar that focuses on ways to advocate for climate change for youth, right? That might be an example of a skill, and that could fit under career development or career services. And so what we're going to do is we're going to spend some more time thinking about this. We're going to focus on just one higher education employability practice column and look at it through the lens of the 5 levers. And so in a moment, we're going to open breakout rooms. Each breakout room will focus, as I said, on just one employability practice, and you'll be randomly assigned to one of those rooms. Your facilitator is going to walk you through an activity and discussion to help generate some ideas about how we can green your assigned employability practice through the 5 levers. And so also please note that interpretation is not going to be available in the breakout rooms. We're going to be conducting these discussions in English. And so with that, I want to pause and make sure there's no questions in the chat. I'm not seeing any. And we're going to go into our breakout rooms and somebody's going to be there to show you everything that we need to do. So don't worry. Okay. All right. Please feel free to join a breakout room. We'll meet back here in about 30 minutes to wrap up this discussion, but I'm so looking forward to seeing your ideas, your examples for each of the employability practices. And we'll see you back here in just a few moments. Thank you. Thank you all for sticking in here, for hanging with us for this long also. Thank you. All right, we have a few more minutes before we close out, and I do have some things I want to share with you, but I was hoping I could get a sense from the rooms, if somebody wants to share maybe one key takeaway that they got, one interesting approach example that they saw for their practice and one of the levers. If any of our room facilitators could share one thing that they really enjoyed. One of the things that I thought was very interesting from my group. So my group was marketing and promotion, just the idea of how universities position themselves. And we talked a little bit about having a university get ahead of where local politics might be and sort of the challenges in having a forward-thinking institution that doesn't have other stakeholders with them, and how do we support higher education institutions in their mission to make their work more green and more climate responsive when the municipal governments maybe or other local actors are not quite there. So we saw a great example of how that works with Quezon City University, but how do we make that work in other contexts where that is not the norm or not part of the political agenda? So I thought that was a very interesting comment from one of our colleagues in the room. Amelena, Carla, anybody else would like to share a key takeaway?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jen. I'll probably share from my group. My group is the Work Integrated Learning Group. So very happy to have learned, from all of the inputs from different contexts, from case studies, examples from the US to Africa to the Philippines. So what I can see in our breakout room is that there are a lot of good examples for work integrated learning, but also very heavy barriers, particularly on the lack of information and also the lack of relevant and shareable and simplified data that is also well understood by different actors. And that is needed in order to strengthen local and national coordination, and that is also needed to therefore inform finance and policy activities. Very happy with what we're able to generate. And I think apart from identifying examples and barriers, we're also able to identify and map out where do we then begin. With it's like a chicken and egg question that where do
Yes.
we begin in a very difficult context. So some examples have been given there. And also finally, we also identified some post-its that we cannot actually exclusively put in one bucket. Some actually cross cuts between two different types of leavers. And so, yeah, I mean, one example for that is that internships are often unpaid and therefore inaccessible to economically disadvantaged
Yes,
youth.
absolutely. It's a great example.
So just
how to
wanted
bring
to
this
share
together.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much,
Oh,
Carla.
thank you.
Milena, I'm curious, you know, the research and the levers, they are integrated, right? From what you've seen. If you have any other key takeaways that you want to share from your group, maybe one before we move on to the end. Yeah.
Okay, absolutely. Thanks, Jennifer. Definitely they are cross-cutting and they work together and they're all interconnected. In our group, we saw both an example of community colleges in the United States starting to offer some courses and certificate programs, but not having enough funding. And then our group saw a lot of barriers, especially in really low income countries, and also in some neighborhoods in the United States where there's such low resources that that these issues are just not top of mind for young people. They're facing so many other challenges. So sensitization and awareness and providing information is really important, according to our participants.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then also hands-on learning, not just theoretical, but very active, perhaps activities to get youth engaged in the topic to start with.
Excellent. Thank you. I saw Carla came on. Maybe Carla, if you have like a 30-second takeaway that you'd love to share from your group.
Yes, so my group was career services, and we were a very small group, but many important conversations were raised, like coordination depends on policy. Without national strategy, coordination becomes a little bit more difficult, and many youth or students decide to go to big cities to look for jobs because there are no available jobs. It is hard to find, and also data for career services is key, but without systematic collection of data and without a robust data protection behind that, it makes things difficult.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing. And our last group, Tran, are you there? Would you be able to share a quick takeaway of 30 seconds? Tran, I can't hear you. Oh, no. Okay. So maybe if Tran can come on in a second, but otherwise, I'd love for us to just note a couple things. One, the Miro board is going to stay open. So if you have additional thoughts, if you want to share that with others that you think might be able to contribute some ideas, feel free to do so. It'll be available for you to add to and reference and go back and look at. So we would be delighted for you to keep on engaging with that. I also would like to sort of think about, as Carlos said, what are our next steps here? And the HELN is really interested in gauging interest from our members on how we can further this work, including maybe creating some sort of guidance document or some sort of reference material that will help us understand how we can make our employability programs responsive to climate change. And so you've probably seen a poll pop up on your screen. We are interested in wondering if you are interested in continuing this conversation and being a part of this work. So if you would like to continue this work, if you would like to see more resources and information around greening higher education employability programs, if you want to be a part of that, please feel free to put in your name, your email address, and your location so that we can follow up with you directly and sort of move this work forward, which I think there's some energy in the room to do that, which I'm very excited about. I'll give you all a minute to fill in the poll as I just, again, want to remind you, you can fill in the poll, or you may always email us at USAID HELN, that's USAID HELN @edc.org if you have any questions, or if you would like more information about this before you sign up, please feel free. And do know that we are going to follow up with all of you with additional details when we have them. We're going to be sharing some synthesized learning from today's session as well in the future, so be on the lookout from the HELN on more information. And then finally, I do want to note, we've shared a bunch of links throughout this web event today, but this slide shows all of the resources that we shared, plus one or two more to get your ideas flowing. And these will be available to you as well after our event in an email that will be sent out from Eventbrite, so keep an eye out for that email. And then finally, I know many of you are already members of the HELN, but for those of you who are here for your very first HELN event, We would love for you to join our network. So to do that, you can click the QR code on the screen or click the link that's in the chat to our, thank you again to our lovely producers. If you're already a member, go ahead and copy that link and share it with a colleague, share it with a friend, somebody you know that would have been interested to learn what we learned today and to participate in these kinds of things. Share our network with others so that we can grow and learn from all of your experiences. And so with that, I think I'm going to say a big, big thank you to all of our presenters, Dr. Novi Marks, Dr. Atienza. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you in absentia for the Mayor Joy Belmont from Quezon City. Thank you so much for your wonderful, wonderful examples. And thank you all for participating, for hanging with us, for engaging and really thinking about these really great, deep, rich ideas. I'm so grateful for your participation. And I really want to thank you for your time today. So with that, I'll sign off and say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. We'll be in touch and take care.